Joining us now from the Senate DOJ and Senate Budget Committee, he's the one and only Nebraska Senator, Senator Pete Ricketts. Senator, we are so excited to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us. What is your take on this tariff fight? We're seeing high tariffs out of Mexico, Canada, and China, anywhere from 10% to even 50%. What do you make of this? We know the market's hitting turbulence. America has been abused for years. Do you feel the White House, the Trump team, is communicating to the markets exactly what the problem is and what the end game is? What do you think?
The Trump administration is being very clear. In fact, the president's been very clear. He's really got two uses for tariffs. One is to get countries to do what we want them to do. In the case of, for example, Canada and Mexico, he wants to end the flow of fentanyl into our country. It's the single biggest killer of our young people, age 18 to 45. 70,000 people a year die from it. So it's one of the things the president's taking very seriously to end, as well as illegal immigration. He also is looking to level the playing field for American companies. The average weighted tariff that we charge products coming into our country is 1.5%. The rest of the world charges our products an average of 6% tariffs. And that means it's 4 times higher. So we want to get to that to be a level playing field so our companies have a fair shot of exporting our goods and services over to places like Europe and so forth, as he's mentioned before. So he's got a strategy. It's a little different depending on the country, but it's really about trying to make America more safe and more prosperous.
But it's really interesting how you just laid it out, Senator. And there's also this, you know, the Trump team, they're trying to detox the economy off of Biden's historically massive government overspending plus Fed money printing. They're trying to get back to above Joe Biden's weak 2% annual growth. They're trying to do deregulation, unleash U.S. energy, unleash U.S. manufacturing, make the tax cuts permanent, and stop the flood of illegal aliens pressuring the system. We can't run $2 trillion annual deficits anymore, but I really want you to take a reaction and listen to Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt today. Listen to what she said. Watch.
Merck has opened a $1 billion facility at its North Carolina site. This is just the latest pharmaceutical company to boost its U.S. manufacturing in lieu of President Trump's tariffs. This announcement follows Eli Lilly's plans to invest at least $27 billion to build 4 new manufacturing plants here in the United States. And Pfizer has also said it's considering moving their manufacturing overseas right here to the United States of America. As the president has said over and over again, when we purchase products made in the USA, the profits stay here, the revenue stays here, and most importantly, the jobs stay here. And despite the globalist mainstream media's attempts to worry consumers, President Trump will not repeat the trend of past American presidents who broke their promises to the American public and smiled while they stuck a knife in the back of American workers and shipped their jobs overseas.
That's tough talk. What do you make of this? Show the list of companies talking about expanding in the U.S. The media and Democrats are saying, well, these are just promises. They're not real. What are you hearing?
My experience with President Trump is that he gets people to deliver on what they say they're going to do, or else they pay a consequence for it. And so I would expect these investments are going to be very, very real, and it will create American jobs. And again, it gets back in line with President Trump's goal of creating more prosperity here in America. You know, the president talks about how we've been treated unfairly by the rest of the world. And again, I just gave you the stats on the tariffs. And what he's trying to do is level that playing field, get the investment back here in this country so that we can create the jobs here. And by the way, this is also important for national security, that we diversify our supply chains out of places like communist China. We can't have all our pharmaceuticals being made there. We saw what happened during the pandemic. This is also about national security as well as our prosperity.
That's a really important point, what people are not talking enough about, what you just mentioned, Senator. Really important. You know, we want to talk about, you know, Wall Street. We see J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs economists talking about recession. And then we see other market pros saying no recession. Trump's doing a reset. It feels like Reagan 1981. We have strong payrolls, strong consumer spending at around 3 or 4%. You know, Wall Street pros think the stock market bottom is pretty close, that this market action that we're seeing, Senator, usually happens late in the downside. It's very oversold. We had an ugly rotation out of big tech into safe haven plays. We saw that happen in the tech bubble burst in 2000. The rest of the market did fine back then. Can you talk to us about how this feels like Reagan 1981? Slow stagflationary growth, government overspending, and then the Reagan tax cuts, Senator.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great analogy here. And, I was just a kid back in 1981, but we can see what happens when you deregulate the economy and you bring your taxes down. We saw it during the Reagan administration, and we saw it during the first Trump administration. President Trump cut, I think, 8 regulations for every one he put in place because he understands that small businesses are the ones that create most of the jobs, and they have the hardest time handling regulation. And if you look at, for example, the NFIB's small business index on their attitude toward the economy, it's very optimistic. It had the biggest jump in optimism in its history, and it's still very high. So when you see small businesses being optimistic about the future, you can bet that they're going to be making investments and creating jobs.
Well, that was a very informative interview. Senator Pete Ricketts, that was terrific. We hope you take the time to come back on soon. That was great. Thank you so much for being with us. It's good to see you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, now please listen.